Welcome to Weird and Wacky Knife Shapes. I'm your host, Jacob. I'm going to be taking you through some of the weirdest, strangest, and rarest knife shapes that we carry here at Knifewear. Oh, I forgot to get this Naoto stool out of the way. There we go. Probably if you're on our YouTube channel, you've already heard of santokus and gyutos, maybe nikiris, but something that we get asked about a lot is this kind of wonderful world of other shapes. I really want to just show you guys some of the wacky stuff. I'm going to start with this guy. One of my personal favorites, and when I was working in the store, this was the one that people constantly asked me about and said, what is that? Is that a meat cleaver? No, it is not a meat cleaver. It's a soba kiri. A soba kiri is specifically designed for, you guessed it, soba noodles. It is super flat along the edge so that when you go through the kind of noodle dough to actually cut it, you can just go straight through, contact the cutting board fully, and then it's got this really nice scoop here for scooping up the noodles when you're done. Let's not cut myself on that. This soba kiri in particular is made by Tojiro. Now there are plenty of other companies who also make soba kiri, and this is not a shape that you find in North America very often because, yeah, we don't really make homemade soba noodles. This guy is not the bathroom mirror. This is a Spanish butchery knife, beef butchery mostly. If you've ever seen those gigantic Spanish bulls that get like massive and they live for like 10, 15, 20 plus years sometimes, they get really big, so they need a really big knife. Now it is actually pretty thin. You can maybe go through some small bones with it, but you don't want to do anything too crazy. I know that the title says Japanese knives, but we do sell this one because as much as the Japanese do love their beef, they don't make very good bone cleavers. Next up, we got something that you're probably familiar with. This is the Hanasuki, or the bone lover. Now this is primarily a chicken butchery knife. This one is the Masashi Kaijin. It's made out of VS1. It's a really awesome knife. Not very rusty, but the Hanasukis are a little bit of a weird shape as well, just because they're so specialized in what they do. And it's good to highlight something like this because lots of people who are watching this video or are trying to find a knife that's very specific, this is probably the knife for you if you're doing a buttload of chickens, which I know lots of chefs do, and it just looks like a giant triangle. Well, a mini triangle, a medium triangle. It can be a medium triangle. Then we get into one of my favorite makers. Now, he has a couple knives up on here because this is, although a nikiri, a very odd nikiri, and this one is called a Kaamuki. Now, Suzuki Uchi, this guy who makes these knives, does this kind of 95-5 style sharpening where they're almost single bevel. The Kaamuki is the first one I'll talk about. This is primarily an eel butchery knife. Now, this is a very small version of the eel butchery knife. There are much larger versions like 210s and things like that, but we have this little tiny guy. This is actually from Nolan's collection. He likes to use it as a cheese knife. Now, it is multi-purpose, but it is specifically designed for eel butchery, so keep that in mind. The Suzuki Uchi Nikiri, like I said, is that kind of odd shape. Now, it has this crazy taper on the spine that it actually folds upwards. Feels really good to pinch grip like this. Feels really good to hold it like that because it has this nice little groove for your pointer finger. It slips right in there. Almost like the opposite of a Fujiwara where your middle finger slides in there, while the Suzuki Uchi, your pointer finger slides right in there. And because it's that single bevel, it has this crazy food release. This is for people that are right-handed, not lefties. If you are a lefty, I'm so sorry. No, I'm not. Learn how to use your right hand. Next, we've got this little guy, Takeda, doing more weird stuff as usual. This is a nikiri. Now, this thing, I struggle to find a use for this thing. This is also from Nolan's collection. I think that it's super cool. It is just something that functionally doesn't have a ton of uses, right? But it is still really cool and rare and kind of a funky shape, right? When I say nikiri with this guy, what ko means is it means small. So anything that you hear me say that has ko in the beginning, so like ko bunka would just mean small bunka, ko nikiri, small nikiri, ko santoku, small santoku. These are all really great knives. Ko santokus and ko bunkas, we have lots of them. Those are pretty commonly made knife shapes by lots of different blacksmiths, especially places like Masakage, anywhere in Takefu Knife Village. So yeah, the ko prefix just means little knife. little blank. The only reason this knife exists as a kitchen knife is because of our Lord and Savior, Kevin Kent. He saw this in a blacksmith shop one day and he said, hey, what's that one for? And they said, oh, it's for shoes. It's for taking the soles off of shoes, for cobblers and things like that. And then he said, great, can you put a handle on it? And can you make it a kitchen knife? And they said, sure, man, whatever you want, Kevin. That's how the Kamagata came to be. Now, this is actually a really sick little vegetable knife. It is super, super fun to use, super flat profile, right? It's got really, really nice board contact. So if you're ever just like chopping something, this is one that we get asked about a lot because this one is the Masakage Zero Kamagata, which I think is really cool. It's a little bit heavier, even though it's a small knife, it has a really cool weight to it. It's quite heavy with that desert ironwood handle. It kind of just falls through food really nicely. So if you're doing like carrots or onions or garlic or shallots or anything like that, this is a super sick knife. It is a really fun one to have in your repertoire. This is probably one of the ones that gets used more out of the weird knife shapes that we have. The Hanasuki and the Kamagata are ones that lots of people know about. This guy right here is a Garasuki, which basically is just a big Hanasuki. It's kind of like a combination of a Deba and a Hanasuki at the end of the day. It's really great for doing things like fish and larger poultry, like a chicken that was raised by the Hutterites, if you've ever seen one of those massive chickens, or something like a turkey, for example. Not one that a lot of people come in asking for, because if you're going to go for a poultry knife, lots of people just go for the standard Hanasuki. But if you're looking at doing something a little bit larger, like I said, like a turkey, this is a much better knife. It'll actually go through some of the turkey bones. Now, this one is basically single bevel. Really, really great, again, for people that are right-handed. If you're left-handed, no weird shapes for you, except for all of them that are double bevel. Those are fine.
Speaking of right-handed knives, here's the second word.
Speaking of right-handed knives, here's another one. This is the Homura Urin. This is a Sakimaru, which basically is just the tip shape. It's a very, very cool knife, but it's essentially just a Yanagiba with a really, really crazy tip on it that's rounded upwards like this. Single bevels are amazing for doing fish butchery, things like that. If you're a sushi chef, this is the knife. This is the knife that you want. It is amazing. It's going to do everything that you could possibly ask for. You're gonna make the best sashimi ever with this knife. But this is made by Itsuo Doi, who is one of like the most well-known blacksmiths that we carry, I would say. Lots of people come in and say, hey, do you have any Doi stuff? This is actually one of my favorite aesthetic knives that we have, especially with the handle, like the half-burnt handle. I think this is a crazy knife to add to your collection, and it's very, very cool. And the Sakimaru tip just adds a little bit of that extra flair, like Itsuo Doi wanted. The greatest joke ever. I don't have a big enough hand for this knife. Once again, this is kind of a Kevin knife special. He kept asking people for longer nikiris, and lo and behold, Anryu-san took this very, very literally and just showed up one day with this gigantically long nikiri. Every time Kevin got a batch of nikiris from Takefu, he would say, oh, can you make them a little bit taller, a little bit longer? Just a little bit taller, a little bit longer. So Anryu ended up coming to Canada here in Calgary to visit. And what he did is he came with a backpack, just a handle sticking out of the backpack like this. And then he was going, is that long enough? How about now? Okay, how about now? Okay, eventually, are we gonna get there? Is this long enough for you, Kevin? Okay, seriously, is this long enough? And then eventually he busted out this gigantically long nikiri, which I think is hilarious. Good on you, Andrew, for having a great sense of humor, and thanks for appeasing Kevin for us, because now we have this. So like I said, this video is about wacky shapes. Now, the thing about wacky shapes is they're wacky and they're rare for a reason. A lot of these shapes that we have are either sold out or there's not very many options. Some of these, literally these two are Nolan's knives. Like I said, we had to ask him to bring in a couple of knives. And there's actually a few wacky shapes here that you don't see here today. There are things like Hakata's, which is a very, very interesting knife that, again, lots of people ask about, which is very similar to like a bunka, but it's got a very rounded spine and then a very, very aggressive tip. This is what they look like. Hakata is actually a region, so you can get Hakata ramen, you know, Hakata chopsticks or something like that, and it's actually just named after the region. Now there's not a lot of knife makers in Hakata, which is why we don't really see a lot of that shape. It's very specific to that region. Speaking of things that are specific to regions, Sasquatch. This is a little bit of a special thing that is very evasive and very elusive. And there is a blog made by somebody by the name of Bevan Bent on our website explaining what these are all about. But these are pretty cool. Not much is known about them because it's very difficult to spot them. They're hiding in the forest. This is another version of the Sasquatch, the Tinker Sasquatch. Now, Tinker knives are extremely rare. We don't have any, nor can we get our hands on them because the people that have them don't want to lend them to us. We also would have to ship them like halfway across the world in some situations. So Tinker knives all are very, very cool, very, very rare. This is what they all look like. And they are also very cool and made by Shibata-san and his crew in Takefu. Every Tinker shape is a weird shape in itself with its own unique story. If you get a chance to snag a Tinker knife, you should absolutely take that chance. Yeah, once it got to a 100-year-long waiting list, we decided that maybe the waiting list isn't the way to go. So we raffle them off very, very rarely whenever we can get them from Shibata-san. If you do win that raffle, you should buy one. You should just enter in the raffle because just to have one of these knives, if you're a real knife nerd, even if you just want something that's functionally really amazing and just a little different than a lot of the other knives that we carry, that is the way to go. Long. This is a Maguro Bocho, or the longest knife ever. This is for tuna butchery in specific. A lot of sushi chefs will use this for actually breaking down a tuna. Again, I'm 6'4", so just for reference, I'm a big guy. This is a really big knife. I know that I make it look smaller. If I put this in Naoto's hand, it would be the same size as him. It is a very specific purpose. Like a lot of the things that we have in this video, it is incredibly specialized at the one thing. Now, you can slice a brisket with this, I'm not gonna stop you, but it's a little excessive. You know, you don't really need this to slice a brisket, but you do need it to slice a big old chunk of tuna. I neglect to mention as well that this is a small one. This is a small tuna knife. This Maguro Bocho is actually a shorter version of most Maguro Bocho. And my forearm is flexing so hard just to keep this thing up. There are some other crazy ones as well, some sandwich knives, some like crazy serrated ones we don't have in here right now. If you think I missed something, please let us know down in the comments because I am not all-knowing of the knives. And I would love to know some things that I missed, and maybe we'll make another video about it one day. If you liked the video, hit the like button, leave a comment, maybe subscribe. Only if you really liked the video though. And yeah, we'll see you next time.